Witcher Old World was a pretty substantial Kickstarter game, earning itself a whopping 5,800,000 plus from a whopping 45,000 backers. It's based on the Witcher universe, which was running high 2 years ago, thanks to the first series of the Netflix show bringing the world into the mainstream and prompting loads of folk, even myself, to give the computer game series a go. Yes, I'd played Witcher 1 and 2 on PC when they first released, but I didn't really finish them, and I couldn't get into the combat mechanics in the early 10s, but I did finally play all three fully, or rather slogged through the first two games after the first series dropped, and I even read all the short stories, fully immersing myself into this great series like many others did. So I, of course, was very interested in the board game when I heard about the Kickstarter. It was solo from the off, which is Boston news to my ears. War badly priced for the base game and all, but I unfortunately don't have the money, unlike a load of other folk as a disabled, unemployed bloke. So I have to be a bit picky when it comes to getting money available for stuff, and I had to sit out the Kickstarter on this one. Lucky for me, though, I heard it was coming to the shops, but many day sit out on this Kickstarter, and because of that general consensus, seems to be pretty polarising on this one, and from playing just the base retail version, I think I sort of understand why, as it's a bit of the old Marvel United effect. See, since this was, as I said, a huge Kickstarter that got bought by a load of folk on the IP basis alone, people saw The Witcher, they saw a huge amount of minis, but they bypassed the actual game or just briefly looked at it and couldn't quite get that this is basically a sort of entry-level adventure game. Like Marvel United, this attempted to appeal to a wide audience, and in doing so, made a very simplistic game that's easy to pick up and play out on the box. Now, for me, that's perfect, but others, crunchy or your mid-weight gamers, they are being satisfied by its simplicity, and they are thoroughly disappointed, labelling it a bit of a Kickstarter bloater. And cards on the table, I could deny some of that criticism, as whenever I've looked at other videos with everything tacked on, I also feel like those stretch goals make this a bit of a bloated mess. See, this game don't realistically need minis. I personally paid 45 quid for this and 50 quid in total with postage, receiving just the base box and tokens, and that I feel makes this game almost the perfect entry point for me. There's no need for the minis at all outside of the heroes, as only the witches move across the board and do stuff. The monsters stay completely static in one spot, except for the legendary encounters ones from an expansion. But if you've got the minis for the base game alone, they just end up sitting there doing naught but looking pretty. There is no need whatsoever for them to exist other than entice Kickstarter backers in, cause whenever there's a whiff of minis available, people's eyes light up and they just gotta have them, even if they sit in a box gathering dust and suit no purpose whatsoever. Then you add on all the extra cards which balloon out the already massive adventure decks, and the monster trail stuff which just gives monsters a weakness that you'll no doubt forget as soon as combat arrives, and extra 4 cards for the monsters to do an extra fight maneuver that seems a bit pointless looking at it from me. And you also add on the mutagens, again, a mechanic which just adds more forgetful bloat into what is at this core a very simplistic system designed for speed and ease of play, in the hopes of making it seem a bit more complex, but realistically, like a great magician bamboozling you with fancy tricks, it's all an illusion to trick you to going all in for nearly 400 quid. Jedi mind tricking you away from what this game actually is, an easier, more accessible, and for me, personally, a vastly superior Mage Knight. See, Mage Knight is a storyless adventure card game. It's a puzzle where you have to utilise the cards each individual Mage Knight has to the best of your ability to move around the map, uncover tiles, level up, and deck build with a more complex mechanic for attacking monsters and 3 towers that's basically solo only and is terrible with multiple players due to slow player turns and downtime. Witcher Old World is a storyless adventure card game. It's a timed puzzle where you'll have to utilise the cards each individual Witcher has to the best of your ability to move around the map, interact with towns, level up, and deck build with a very simplistic but fun combat mechanic where you'll hunt down 3 monsters. That's basically solo only, as it's apparently terrible with multiple players due to slow player turns and downtime. One is complex, that takes you 3 to 5 hours to play, and one is Fisher-Price's My First Adventure Game that takes about an hour to play solo. And it's in that dichotomy that you will choose which one you enjoy more, because this to me is everything I wanted Mage Knight to be originally. And I hated Mage Knight because of its needless complexity. I love simplistic games. I was a Games Workshop only player for 20-something years. 3rd to 5th edition were my bread and butter along with Mordheim, and they are known for appealing to a wider audience because of their accessibility, but still fun to play games. So whenever I play really crunchy stuff, I tend not to enjoy it unless the base rules are easy to master, because I'm getting a bit forgetful in my middle age, I won't lie, and I like to jump into a game with easier to pick up and play, learn and remember rules. I don't want to watch 3 sets of half-hour long videos on YouTube telling me how to move, recruit and do combat, which I felt Yo had to do with Mage Knight, because for me it was a bit saft with all the needless details for moving across different terrain types, attacking certain monsters with all their conditions and effects, and having wounds basically bloat your deck, let alone attacking towers with loads of enemies and all sorts of blocks, poisons and damage counters which trigger. For me it was just pointless bloat that meant you couldn't just set up a game and jump into it. Witcher Old World though gives me that easy to play feeling I need. Set up the game and use cards from your hand to move to locations, then interact or fight in and out within an hour, and that's exactly what I enjoy. The 5 Witcher minis are also brilliant little sculpts. There's some great details in each one, and you can easily tell which school they are from at a glance, as they all seem individual and each have their own great little pose that matches the artwork on the Witcher boards, so much that I wouldn't even think you'd need to use the colorized base toppers that come with the game, even if you played with multiple players, because the artwork throughout all the game is just sublime. The card art, Witcher art, monster art, even the art on the back of the cards I feel is sensational and really shows a lot of time and effort really went into making this a premium product. The monster cards show all of the monsters you have faced in the Witcher games to devastating effect, and it really brought back some flashbacks for me when I saw Drowners, the Noon Wraith or Striga pop up randomly from my enemy card draw, and I really wanted to take them down. The art on your Witcher's decks show off all the sign powers in full effect, and the combat cards from the market also don't shy away from the devastating effects of violence Witchers can do to monsters, as you see many heavy attacks really slicing out some of the monsters, burning things with Igni, or using your personal shield Quen. The huge event card deck is another great positive here, as depending on choices you make during your town or outskirt quests, you can stumble upon quite a few decent upgrades or helpers in the numbered deck, some of which you could inadvertently end up fighting or getting ranged weapons to assist in your fights against the monsters. Every little helps after all, especially when you go against some of those level sodding 3s. And I have to say it, but those exploration decks being separated between towns and outskirts means you're just never likely to encounter the same ones over and over again. 7 times I've played this game using all the witches. I've used 2 twice, and I'm yet to get the same quest twice. I'm probably near the bottom of the deck for a reshuffle, but I'm not there yet, and I think that's going to be a great thing even in the base game, as you are going to be playing this all the while. You're going to be taking breaks between plays, and so you'll probably forget the result on reshuffles, or you'll deliberately choose the alternative and open up a new quest line or effect that changes your game up. And so that's a big positive for me, as sometimes you might feel like you have done the right choice for The Witcher, and you might have interfered in events that don't concern you, just like the games. Seriously, Geralt would have killed the bloody cursed tree in Witcher 3. He would never let that thing steal children and luring and killing villagers. It sickens me seeing people even trying to debate that online, but it is what it is. Lastly though, my big positive is the quality of all the playing components. The cards are tarot sized, so are bigger than regular cards. Yes, it's a swine for sleeving, could cost a bit more, but for a working class bloke who used to work on buses and got his ons crushed and bossed 3 times, they are perfect size for me massive ons. It's so much easier to shuffle and play the sodding game, along with them being easier to read for a bloke who suffers with his eyes. The dice are massive, and I love myself some big chunky dice, but I will say the black ones are the easiest to read from my perspective, but it's so satisfying chucking big sodding dice across the table. The board is also huge, with easy to read place names, see travelling lines, numbers, activities you can interact with once you can arrive. And I also love the fact that everything has its place on the board for the base game. Potions, the card markets, monsters, everything goes on here in its own little place, and it just makes it easier to speed up the game for you when playing, as you know what to do, where to go, and what to collect, with all the places of the game being broken down as you go left to right on the board and collect stuff. It's a great piece of design with a gorgeous map on top featuring places you'll know from the games and books. And the Witcher boards themselves are double thickness with indents cut out for your leveling up skills and levels, and also feature card slots for you to slot in extra abilities once you gain them and you kill the monsters. I really love the boards also in this game, and it shows the craft and care they put into this premium product. They're all slots back into the box easy enough when fully sleeved, as they also provided an in-box storage system where every piece goes into its own little dedicated compartment without baggies. And I feel like I have an heart attack these days whenever I see one of those, as I'm just sick to death of bagging stuff up and just dumping it all back into the box where it just shakes about as you take it upstairs and put it on your shelf. The fact that all cards, tokens and witches have their own safe and well thought out compartment is just brilliant, and shows how great Kickstarter can be for the design process, as it saves you buying an extra 15 quid plus one off another company and giving them sodding money for something the original company should have done in the first place. Seriously, many games could benefit from a great storage in box, as it just means setup and teardown time is reduced and you spend more time playing the blooming game that you've bought. But I do have a couple of issues with certain components, the gold especially, as the cardboard for it is a bit naff and it just don't feel great in your ons. I will admit that I've been spoiled by iron clays from Brass Brum lately, or metal coins by Raiders of the North Sea, and I do feel the location tokens do need to be put in them little 2p capsules, since you have to shuffle them up quite often. But that's it really. The tokens from the monsters are fine, as they just sit there on the board and don't need to be shuffled at all if you use the cards and shuffle them instead to randomly choose your 3 monsters, with the artwork once again looking exceptional and really capturing the monster over a 50p sized token that sits on the board waiting for you to fight it. But after all that gushing, let's go on to my dislikes. As being objective, this game ain't fully perfect, and it definitely ain't for everyone. I've heard in multiplayer there is a load of downtime between turns where you're sitting around like an anime character in a shonen jump waiting for your opponent to stop monologuing and actually do something, but I'm solo only, and so that don't really affect me. I just want to put it out there, along with saying that simplicity, of course, has its drawbacks, especially in the combat department for the enemies. See, you have one 20-card deck to represent all the monsters base game. You will draw between 10 and 18 cards at random, and you'll just choose one of the 2 effects, bite or charge, or in solo you roll a d6 and then one of 2 things happen. It will be a soft attack or a hard attack, and there's no thematic sense or style in the attacks from individual monsters in the base game. It's one effect or the other, completely random trigger, and you're at the mercy of the dice and card, and those cards are the same for every monster. The cards are also their health pools, along with yours being in your deck, and so randomness can play a hell of a big factor in you getting your great combo cards out, and choices during the deck building phase also, as a card you want to always play you might never see during any combat due to luck and randomness. And the deck building aspect is another part which I feel is a little bit lacking in this game. Yes, every Witcher starts off with their own personal deck and individual cards in them. One might have more blues for light quick attacks, one more greens for better defense, one more reds for strong attacks, with yellows and purples being more sign and combo cards. But you could just focus on one aspect in this game to win. If Igni Spam was your favourite sign of choice in the game, you could just pick all the Igni cards up and expect to win. Firstly, the main reason is because there ain't many odd or Igni cards available, and the card deck is so huge, the likelihood of you seeing one in the game outside of your starting deck is very bumming slim. But it's also because this game is mainly about the combos. Imagine Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You see a half pipe into a grind rail into a jump that lands you in the bowl you can grind across or hold your board on. That game itself was all about combos to max your score, and here your combos in your deck maximise your combat prowess, as the more cards you put down, the more damage you do, negating the life of the monster and thus lowering the chances of them dealing tons of damage to you. But of course your cards are your health pool too, and you need to build a balanced deck that gives options for combos, damage, defense and wounds. So always buying the expensive cards will always win you the game, as you have to spend your cards to buy others, and you only get one a turn to buy one card. Yes, you could wait till Summer Chepper, but that only happens in the last card on the spot, and it's only Chepper by one, and the Chep cards are often a bit naff, so the deck building for me ends up being a bit of a disappointment. When I think of deck building, I like to have the option of buying more than one card at a time, or I also prefer having more than 10 or so turns to fully build my deck up. But here, with the game not lasting very long, you really only have 10 to 12 turns before you're done without really dragging it out, and So that's what, 10 to 11 cards to add to your deck max, meaning your options are a bit limited in the same way it is with Mage Knight, and you'll really have to plan out your upgraded cards best for combos and pick one of the coloured paths to get on. This means the deck building aspect of this game is where all your tactics are, as the cards have dual uses with the movement and all. So you don't want to waste your movement across the board whilst being a beast in battle, and thus you'll get to build a decent balanced deck, but I'd never consider this a good deck builder because of the limitations of the cards on offer, and the fact that solo often tended to just pick up the card in the almost free -1 cost slot due to wanting to bulk my deck out for health, with me only just buying 3 to 4 great combo cards in the 2 cost range, which just means the deck building is very weak from my personal perspective, and it's a letdown. Lastly though, my other complaint is a severe lack of money on offer in a Witcher game, where you're supposed to be a travelling monster killer who removes threats around towns and villages, but most of the quests go on don't offer much money or at all, or even often, and so the only real way of earning anything is through dice poker, which is only available in certain towns, and then you're totally reliant on the luck of the dice once again, where you only get 1 reroll and need at least 3 of a coin to earn just 1 extra coin, and when Witcher schools need 2, 3, 4 or even 5 coins to upgrade just 1 level, you suddenly realise you'll need to be constantly earning at least a bit of money to move you up on 1 specialist level for you to meditate on that wins you the game. And so you need to be either trying to consistently earn money that relies on luck, or you'll need to get a crest reward that gives you money, which is once again based on luck. And that heavy luck based element can be a swine in solo mode when you're hoping to win the game in 6 to 9 turns, as it basically means you're heavily reliant on everything going your way, and unless you get a big break, you're up a creek without a sodding paddle, and there's no way you can compete the game in a quick time frame, no matter what you do, without Lady Luck being on your side. So as I said, this game is going to be decisive simply because it's a very simplistic adventure game that can be completed within an hour and a half max at solo. It's a race to level up your stats and deck, so you can kill just 3 monsters that don't change overall in the solo mode, and if you die to one of them, it's either game over or you'll just wake up in the next turn and go again. It's the Marvel United of adventure games, simple enough to learn, quick enough to have fun and play, and if you after something a bit more meaty, you are going to find it here. There's no campaign, there's naught to do but test out all 5 witches and go against all the monsters, and that's it. A full one-off game. You can just get on the table on a Sunday after dinner and have some fun and kill an afternoon. That's all this is. Some people will like to buy all the minis and extra stuff that bloats this one out, or creates an extra race mechanic with the legendary monsters along with all the bloated decks and monster weaknesses. But I ain't one of them folk. This works for me exactly as it was intended, a simplistic adventure game. And that might not be for you. There ain't that wrong with that. You just need to know that before you go and buy it, as this one is on the lighter end, and that the fancy models just do that but look pretty. So buying the cheapest base version of this would be the best bang for your buck, to use a Yankee term, and if you do crave something more meaty, in all honesty, just buy sodding Mage Knight for the same price, or even a bit cheaper these days. They are at the core the same sodding game, and both are great for solo players depending on the weight and complexity you prefer. So there we have it. I personally love this game. It works for me, and I love getting it on the table whenever I fancy just going on a bit of a short adventure like Bilbo. So cheers for watching, and tatty bye.